Hi, my name is Josh, and this is my soul story. Even though I grew up in a quote-unquote Christian household, my dad is a Southern Baptist preacher, I found out very quickly from the age of like 15 that I dove straight into substance abuse and addiction. And that all kind of just boiled down to I just wanted to feel good. Using substances was a way for me to feel good, and then people-pleasing and codependency was a way to make sure everybody else was okay, because that was the only way that I was okay. I had a pretty massive shift in my life in my 30s, early 30s, late 20s, early 30s, when I got addicted to prescription stimulants, because I'd always used drugs casually, and I'd always drank pretty heavily. You know, I was kind of a wild guy back in the day. I was a bartender in Westport, and I played in bands, and I had kind of a crazy lifestyle. But that all started to the things that gave me pleasure became less and less, and those started to really come to fruition in the form of specifically Adderall and alcohol. And my life just became a daily up and down of how do I get high, and then how do I come down, and then how do I get high, and how do I come down. And eventually I started staying up for days on end and having, hallucinogenic psychopath episodes, and my mental health was declining rapidly. So I had a lot of really dark days, especially 2018, 19, 20, especially late 19, early 20, had a lot of really dark days. But the one that I chose to focus on for this was a day when that I remember specifically, but also it's very vague. It's very kind of cloudy because it was so dark. I'd come home from a early morning men's Bible study. So yes, I was still going to church and still lying about that. And I'd come home from an early morning men's Bible study, and I had been up all night, I think for 2 days, and I was really not well. I felt horrible. I was crashing from being up that long. The drugs were wearing off. I was hungover. I was tired. I was just having a real moment of what is wrong with my life? What have I done to my life? And about that time, I'm sitting alone. There's nobody else in my house. I'm sitting alone in my living room, and it must have been the first Wednesday of the month, because all of a sudden I start hearing the tornado sirens go off outside. And as I'm sitting there just thinking, oh my gosh, I feel horrible. I don't know what to do. Something's got to change. These tornado sirens start going off, and they get louder and louder. And they kind of come and they go, and they come and they go. And eventually these tornado sirens kind of became one sound. And looking back on it, I think I was having a traumatic response and also hallucinating in the same moment, because that tornado siren turned into a voice that told me that I was a failure, and that I was never going to change, and that I should kill myself. And it was the most darkness I've ever been present with. I don't even know how else to say that. It was just a present darkness. And that fear of that darkness is something that I will never forget. But I know in that moment, I don't know where it came from, but I just knew that I was frozen. And this all spilled over on another very dark day, but it ended up being a very light day in the end. But on Easter morning, 2020 was a turning point, and was I would say the rock bottom day, if that's what you want to call it. In my head, my phone rang, and I don't even know why I had my phone with me or why I looked at it, but I looked at it and my mom was calling me. And don't know why, but I picked it up and I answered, and all my mom said was, Josh, we don't know what's going on, but we want you to come to our house. That was the day that things really started to turn around. I ended up going to a recovery group, found a sponsor that is my sponsor today, and those two guys have walked with me every day of my recovery since that day, and they've continually pointed me to Jesus and to the Bible, which it's this Bible right here, this recovery Bible right here. I received this on the first day that I moved, that I left my house, and this right here is the thing that those two guys point me to, and it is the thing that has helped me transform my life. I've taken a lot of time to work through this stuff and write it down, so if it's okay, can I just read it? On August 26, 2020, I attended a night of worship at my church. I've been clean and sober for just over 10 days and was struggling. I was tired, fatigued, in physical and emotional pain, and to be honest, was ready to give up, not just on my recovery, but on life. The withdrawal had been a gradual irritant, which had slowly turned into a piercing headache and what felt like the center of my brainstem emanating to my bones. I remember that moment like it was yesterday walking into that worship service. Detoxing had seemed to drag on like a scab that wouldn't heal, or the slow leak of a rusted bucket. I kept thinking to myself, I can't keep going on like this. And if this is what being sober is like, why would anybody want to live day in and day out feeling this way? I could have left and had a drink or a pill, and and the pain would have gone away, but I didn't, because I knew exactly where that would lead me. So I decided to make one more push through the pain and go inside. During that worship service, It Is Well was on the set list, and while the band and others worshiped around me, I began to get bitter and angry at myself. The dull headache I had walking in was now becoming a vexing migraine. I was not well. I had not kept my eyes on God. I couldn't sing the words. Even though I had been denying myself for a period of time, I was doing it out of my own strength, and that strength was wavering quickly. I knew that if I sang one word of that song, I was lying. I didn't want to be a liar anymore. I'd been a liar for 20 years. I was sick and tired of being sick and tired of my lies, selfishness, and pride. It was the first time I'd been completely honest with myself and with God. Not just in thought or intention, but in action. The song ended, and then something happened that was clearly God's grace in real time by letting me know He was listening and saw my honest anguish. At that moment, Pastor Chad jumped on the stage, interrupted the service by grabbing the microphone from Amy, and said something I'll never forget. He said, "I've never done this before, but there's someone here that isn't done with that song, so I want to ask the band to start it over from the beginning and give that person another chance to get right with God." The Holy Spirit prompted Pastor Chad to stop the service and ask the band to play the same song we had just sang again. Start it over from the beginning. Repeat it in its entirety. At that moment, I knew God was truly gracious and was giving me another chance to offer my heart up for healing and make my soul right. He was telling me that He always has been, and always will be well with my soul, even if I wasn't. I dropped to my knees in awe and surrendered. I not only felt, but knew the peace that surpasses understanding, because believe me, I didn't understand, and yet I knew and believed deep in the core of my heart that God loved me. I told the truth in humility, and God listened. That night on the concrete floor of my church sanctuary, I turned my life over to Jesus. But now I look at my Bible, and I look at my relationship with Jesus, and I say, well, how can I look at this through the lens of my relationship with Him? And how do I make choices that future Josh is going to thank me for? Because that's the only way that I know how to live my life according to His plan.